Good morning and welcome to Saturday Morning Sewing with Shalancia. This is class number 2 of our Kitchen Connection series. If you missed class number 1, definitely go back to our YouTube channel and check it out. We made these really fun pot holders, and all of these projects are very beginner friendly. So if you are a new sewing student or just, brushing up on your sewing skills, these are some very fun and practical projects for you guys to work on. Today we are making these really cute pocket placemats. These pockets are really awesome for holding cutlery. This is a really great project for decorating your dinner table. And like I said, especially if you're new to sewing, this is a really fun project as you get the hang of it. There's so many variations you can make, but let's begin by making it first so you guys can see how fun and easy this is for you to sew. To make this placemat, you are going to need the placemat side pattern and the placemat pocket pattern. When you cut these patterns, they're both going to be exactly the same. The only difference is that the fabric that you choose for your placemat pocket will get folded in half with the folded edge being along this side, and it will sit just on top of the side of the placemat, just like this. You will also need the placemat square fabric, which is this piece, and they kind of go and fit together like this. For the backing or the lining, you will need a full pattern piece. This is your backing, and you will also need a batting rectangle cut of the same size, and I will show you guys how to work with that a little bit later. And just one more thing before we begin. If you downloaded this pattern, I would have given you guys a series of squares, and they might seem a little bit complicated if you're not accustomed to cutting out your patterns, but this square pot piece here basically asks for you to cut on the fold here and here. So if you are cutting out this pattern, if you have fabric, you can just gently fold it over with a fold being like here, and fold it again with another fold being here. And that's how you use this quarter square pattern to cut the full square that you will need for your pocket placemat. And with the pocket patterns and the side pattern, it's the same thing. The only difference is, as opposed to using this side on the fold, you will basically just cut one edge on the fold up here. And you will do that for both of them. Remember, like I said, they're both exactly the same pattern. The only difference is that one will stay straight and the other will get folded in half to be placed on top of it. When you're cutting your rectangle, again, you're going to be doing the same thing with the pattern that we have for you that we downloaded or that we have available for download. The top half is going to be on the fold, and so is the side. And that is just basically how you use this quarter scale pattern to cut on the fold here and cut on the fold here. And that's just a quarter rectangle for you to make your full size rectangle. And this is the same pattern that you will be using for your batting. Let's begin. The first three pattern pieces that you will need are your placemat square, your placemat side pattern, and your placemat pocket pattern. You are going to start by laying your placemat square on a flat surface with the bright side facing up. This pocket with the folded half being on the inside edge, you are going to line it up along the side, and you are going to place the side of your placemat side pattern along this edge here, and we are gently going to do a straight stitch. You want to just center this out. If your ends aren't matching up 100%, it just probably happened in your cutting process. but you are going to go ahead and pin this pocket down and pin your side of your placemat down so that we can do a straight stitch along this side using a 1/2 inch seam allowance to connect these pieces together. I'm going to start by placing my fabric under my presser foot. I'm going to lower my lever. I'm going to give myself a good 3-stitch back stitch, and then I am going to straight stitch across here. You guys might notice that when I'm sewing, I usually have my pins going in lengthwise. I do that a lot, especially when I'm sewing with young children, just to remind them to take them out. You can definitely use your pins going in a crossway manner and sew over them. But when you are teaching young children to sew, or if you have a classroom of about, 5 or more children sewing together, you definitely do not want them sewing over pins as they do not know the full mechanics of doing so, and you want to not traumatize them by having them break their needles by accident. I get to my end. I'm going to, again, my 3-stitch back stitch. I will clip my threads and remove my fabric. So at this point, you will have the seam connected and you also have your pocket connected also. What we want to do is definitely go ahead and give this a really good ironing, and then we are going to just do a stitch along this edge to secure this seam. If you know, or if your machine does a decorative stitch, that's a really fun time to utilize that because you're going to be seeing this part, and adding a nice stitch or nice decorative stitch makes it look really cute. But you can also do a straight stitch. It looks just as good. So a really good thing to do is, although we've been using a 1/4 inch seam allowance, sorry, a 1/2 inch seam allowance. I'm not quilting today. We want to basically use this seam to secure both of these pieces, and so that when you wash this placemat, it's not going to just be too difficult to iron and come back together as one. So we're going to turn our fabrics over to this side of going towards the square of the placemat. And we're going to just do a stitch, possibly about a 1/4 inch to an 1/8 of an inch down along the edge of your seam. And you notice I didn't really back stitch on this one. You definitely can, you don't necessarily have to. You're going to be securing the edges of the seam once you put your backing on, so it's not that imperative, but for good practice, it is usually a good idea to back stitch because that way you don't have to differentiate between the times when you need to back stitch and the times when you do. To put the placemat together, you start by laying down the batting and just kind of smooth out all the edges. And then you are going to place your placemat, which is now the topper of your placemat, right on top of it. You're going to just hand press it out. Don't worry about any of these excess ends on here. You will be using a good 1/2 inch seam allowance, so you will be able to cut these off and straighten it up as you're going along. And now the backing of the placemat, you are going to place right on top of this. Bright sides to bright sides, just like this, and hand press it out. A question that I'm asked a lot is, where do you leave your opening? We're going to leave our opening just over here. We're going to leave about maybe like a 2 to 3 inch opening so that we have enough space to turn it over to the bright side. And then I'm just going to put a couple more pins. I want to secure my pocket so it doesn't move around while I'm sewing. and just to secure the rest of my fabrics so it is not moving around on me when I'm sewing. Okay, I'm going to start from here. I'm going to go to my corners, stop, pivot, go to this corner, stop, pivot. So down from here to this corner, stop and pivot, all the way across, stop and pivot, and then back to here where I'm going to stop. Take this pin out, my back stitch, and then we will sew. Again, I'm using a very generous seam allowance. This is about a 1/2 inch. By the time I'm finished, I don't have any holes in my placemat. I'm going nice and slow on this. With some machines, especially when you have so much fabric in here, sometimes you don't want to sew too quickly because you run the risk of breaking your needle if it's not strong enough. But also to be careful to make sure that all of these layers of fabrics that you have inside this placemat are being sewn together well, and that once you finish and turn it over to the bright side, you're not going to have many holes in it. And then I'm coming home to my home stretch. I'm going to sew up to my pin mark here, and I'm going to stop, give myself a good little back stitch here to secure my fabric, and I will disconnect and remove my fabric. Once I'm finished, do not forget to remove your pins before you turn this placemat over to your bright side. When you are at your corners, you can definitely give them a good, just clip them off so that you don't have any excess or bulky fabrics on the edges once you turn. And that's one of the reasons too, whenever I'm sewing something that's a square or a rectangle, I don't like to leave my opening at the corners because the machine gives it such a really great right angle in there. I like leaving my opening somewhere in the middle so that my machine gets the corners. And like I said before, if there's any excess fabrics that you have, you can just go ahead and trim them off at this point. You really do not need them to hold up any integrity of this placemat. The one thing you definitely want to be mindful of is that when you are trimming off this excess fabric, that you are not cutting into the seam lines that you just sewn. Just gonna just trim this up a little bit better, make it just a little bit smoother for me when I turn this to the interior. And then you have this opening now. You have two openings. You have the opening going towards the batting, and you have the opening going towards your fabric. You want to use the opening going towards your fabric to turn this to the right side. Sometimes if you use the other opening, you'll get to it and you'll be like, whoa, what happened? Where's my pocket? If you want to see the pocket and you want this to be functional, you definitely want to use the fabric side to turn this over and not the batting side. And this might get a little bit tricky in here. It's just a lot of fabric. It just comes to a big intersection. Everybody wants to see the light, so just be a little patient with it. Don't pull too hard because you do not want to rip anything that you have made, and you want to ensure that your awesome work is remaining intact. And just kind of go ahead and poke these out as you are turning. Just check to see if you've missed any areas. If you have one of these wooden poking tools, this is a good time to go in there and just poke out these corners. You did such a good job at sewing them. You don't want this to not show on your finished product. Just gently poke them out, get those pockets out of there, and then this is a good time to give this pocket placemat a good ironing. When you're ironing it, just tuck these edges from your opening on the inside and iron this placemat to smooth it out. Once it's ironed, it should look nice and smooth like this. We're going to go back now on our machine and close this opening. A question that I get asked frequently is, can you sew all the way around? Yes, you absolutely can. For time today, I'm just going to sew this opening closed, but yes, you can sew all the way around, and yes, you can also use a decorative stitch as you're doing that. When you are sewing this edge closed, we want to just edge stitch it. So we put it under our machine and we just want to just stitch it close to the edge. What we want to make sure is that those flaps that are open, we close them up. And if you go ahead and use like your 1/4 inch or 1/2 inch, well, a 1/4 inch will be fine, but like your 1/2 inch seam allowance, you might not capture all that opening to close it up adequately. And here we go. Thank you guys so much for sewing with me today. I hope that you enjoy your lovely pocket placemat. You can make so many of these for your table, especially during the holiday season. There's so many variations you can do. Once you get the hang of it, you can add embroidery. I have a pattern here where we do a nice quilted placemat for the square part of the pocket. This is so much fun to make. If you are a member of our Creativity Shell crew, this pattern is available for free download on our website, www.creativityshell.org. If you are not a member of our crew, definitely sign up. It's about $25 a year, 54 family, and you can get free patterns, recipes, and a lot more good stuff. And all of it goes to supporting our organization, the Creativity Shell. If you don't know who we are, definitely check us out online. Thank you guys so much. Have a happy sewing day.